Great, good afternoon everybody. Welcome to this session. We'll be on for about an hour, I think. They've given us some extra time. We're slightly overrunning, as you well know. My name is Guy Perring. I'm the Regional Director for Tribal iGraduate, who are one of the sponsors of this event. I'm delighted to be joined by a very distinguished panel representing the spectrum of private higher education in Malaysia. They're all very familiar faces to you all, I'm sure, but I will introduce them. Prof. Khong, who's Deputy Vice-Chancellor of Help University. Help University was one of the founders, really, of private higher education in Malaysia back in 1986, I guess along with INTI and UCSI, who are obviously also represented here today. I'm also joined by Prof. Zita, the Vice-Chancellor and CEO of Quest International University, Perak. I guess one of the newer kids on the block. And also representing the world of TNE, a UK campus, in fact a Scottish campus in Putrajaya, the Provost and CEO of Heriot-Watt, Prof. Mushtak. And also representing the digital evolution of private higher education, Prof. Ansary, who is the founder and president of Asia E-University. The session synopsis in the outline looks at feedback on the current new government policies. We've had quite a lot of that from the previous speaker, so I'm going to try and jump around and keep the session fairly lively. Apologies if I interrupt some of the speakers. But first of all, you've got an opening sort of 5 minutes to set the scene. And we really are looking at how have recent government policies really affected your institution. Prof. Zita, if you can open with your remarks. Prof. Zita.
Thank you very much, Guy. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to my host for inviting me to share my thoughts on this. If some of you don't know where I came from, I used to work for MQA for about 20 years. I'm not sure how to react to what the previous speaker mostly talked about what MQA should do. But I would say I have this experience of working in a public university, working with MQA in the ministry, as well as working in a private sector today. But we are working for the same reason, for the same cause. So I was thinking that the word future ready, education future, capable society is our business. We are all responsible for it. And if I look back in the last 6 months, Guy, there were a lot of new statements coming out from the ministry about the new direction that the ministry is taking on higher education. We are at the stage of changing higher education scenario. The kind of transformation is something we actually cannot even foresee right now. But having been in a private university for some time now, I do understand that we are in a very complex system. Private university must have a social phase, an economic environment, physical environment, financial environment, technology environment. So you can imagine the kind of pressure that we are in to do this. But being there, I would say, I'm not really going to touch on the recent changes or anything like that, but because we have been, like what Prof said, and we talked about it earlier, we've been going around and around on the same issue. There's a lot of work going on to review many things. But as for us to grow now, in view of all the challenges that we are seeing internally, I think there should be basically some again, it's an old issue. There's a need to look at how much micromanaging we need to face from the system, from the authorities. And how much autonomy can we move on from where we are. And I would think being there for some time, IPTS tend to be very agile. I think we make changes very fast, but most of the changes requires approval from ministries and so on. So that takes time. So I think the change will be difficult. We wish for a minimal, a less controlled environment. We are heavily regulated by the market, actually, in terms of fees, in terms of recruitment, and so on. And we felt that as a broad policy statement, we hope to see that the providers are actually treated by virtue of their establishment, their track record, their risk performance, and so on. Because different institutions should not, we should be able to entertain them differently. And I felt that, for example, a policy statement coming from the ministry about hybrid, flexible, shorten the qualification. I wonder what you guys did about it. Shorten your degrees, hybrid, we've been doing it. From where I used to work, shortening the degrees would worry us because we are subjected to national standards, national qualifications framework. We're looking at the learning outcome, the competencies of students, and so on. We were worried whether we're going to lose national recognition, international recognition, because our qualifications are well recognized abroad. So these are things that need to be thought about before we embark on any structural change in our system. Let me start with that. Thank
Fantastic.
you.
I've got a quick follow-up for you. You mentioned about sort of public and private. I mean, the ex-minister who spoke earlier obviously said about public and private institutions should be treated the same. It's
a very nice statement to make, but where I come from, where we always see the differences between public and private. I think we should have a more harmonious situation. The same policy applies to public and private equally. I think that we're looking at the funding issue because I think private university provide at least 50% of the talent output outside there, and yet we have to pay for every single thing except for PTPTN support that we get. I think there are other measures that we should look at in terms of standards, in terms of incentives, and so on.
Great, thank you.
Make it more harmonious.
Excellent, thank you very much. Prof. Khong, over to you.
Thank you, Guy, and thank you very much to the organizers for giving me the opportunity to vent some of the issues that have been long outstanding. But I have to say there have been some innovations, positive innovations in the higher education scene. Firstly, I think if you look at the education blueprint, you will see the subheading, education as an industry. And this is what we have been trying to get the Ministry of Education and Ministry of Higher Education to acknowledge, that we are actually making a very positive contribution in terms of the economy. And it should be therefore given the recognition and the incentives to do better. And this is certainly something in the right direction. The other positive innovation which has come about very recently is APEL, A-P-E-L. That is the accreditation for prior learning, both as an entry qualification as well as the exemption of credits in the course of a program. So these are actually very important innovations which the ministry has made, which I think are very good for adult learners as well as people who have missed out on an earlier opportunity at higher education. That is, if you have worked for so many years, your work experience will now be counted or accredited. So if you're an adult and you're still interested in doing higher degrees, please check that out with MQA. So these are great innovations, which has happened in other countries, but we are glad that Malaysia has finally put this into practice. And of course, there are many issues which my good friend Prof. Zita has already articulated about micromanagement. Actually, Malaysian private education programs are probably among the most audited in the world. Very, very strict control. There are at least five rounds of audit. I will just briefly run through them. Before a program is submitted, we have to do a big document, submit it to MQA, so that's first round. They will come back and say, this is right, this is not right, please make the corrections. And before that, we will have to have an accreditation. After the program is run for 1 year, 2 years, we will have an accreditation. So the MQA team will come and accredit. So 2 credits, 2 accreditations. We now have a maintenance audit. And again, auditors, we are supposed to fill up volumes of documentation. Besides this maintenance audit, there's a Satara audit or a MyQuest for colleges. So there's 4 already. Very extensive preparation for documentation for them to come and audit. If you want to recruit foreign students, Ministry of Education or Higher Education will come again for another audit, in addition to the Ministry of Home Affairs. So to recruit foreign students, altogether 6 rounds of audit. So we are probably highly audited, one of the most audited in the world. And this is what I mean by this micromanagement of the programs that are being offered. And the other thing which I like to raise is in regards to the fees. The control of fees by private educational institutions. The Ministry of Higher Education demands a lot of things from us. Facilities, qualified staff, research, but the fees are all controlled and limited by the Ministry of Higher Education, which is something that they should not do. There are so many private institutions now, we should let the market decide what the fee should be like. There are a wide range of institutions offering a wide range of fees, so students can have the option of choosing which university or which institution they would like to attend. So that's the micromanagement part of it. But sometimes there is great anomaly in what the policy of the ministry should be. I think it is a bit ridiculous, but I'll highlight it to you. For example, English language. Now, the private English language institutes are allowed to recruit foreign students to do an English language program for 6 months. But universities are not allowed to recruit similar students to do a 6-month English program. So that's a big anomaly. Another very important anomaly is the fact that universities cannot certify people who can be qualified in English. For example, help university and say, Guy, you have fulfilled all the requirements for a PhD degree, we will give you a PhD degree. But we cannot say, Guy, you have fulfilled the minimum requirements to satisfy the English language program to enter our university. You have to go and sit for IELTS or some other English program, so-called international program. So we can confer PhDs, but we cannot certify that he is qualified to join our program with the minimum control of English language. So this is something which I hope the ministry would look into, the non-recognition of certification of English language programs offered by private universities. I do not want to play the same record over and over again because we have raised many of these issues over many, many years, decades actually, to be very honest. And if Malaysia wishes to become a center for English or higher education, we must facilitate the process. We must make it very easy for foreign students to enroll with us, provided that they meet the qualifications to enter the program. Not put in obstacles. Not put in obstacles like visas that have to be renewed every year. You have to pass the English language IELTS before you join. Why can't they come and learn English here? Because when they come to Malaysia to study, they'll get full immersion in the English language and they will learn much faster. So these are some of the points I would like to highlight today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Khong. Thank you. A quick follow-up from me. I mean, obviously HELP's been around since 1986. Why is there this reluctance not to give you the autonomy that you desire and this culture of over-auditing that you've mentioned. Why is that?
That is a question you have to ask the Ministry of Higher Education, actually. I can't answer that question.
What would they say?
Well, I said, if you trust me to confer a PhD, you don't trust me to confer an English language certificate. A bit ridiculous.
Okay, thank you very much, Prof. Khong. Okay, now over sort of into the digital world. Prof. Ansary, for your opening remarks.
Thank you, Guy. And let me start by thanking the organizers for inviting me to this, what you call a discussion. I've been here many times before. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and a very good afternoon to all. I'm just going to take a different, what you call, spin on this rather than looking at it from a digital perspective. Because Guy's first question was, how has the recent policies, etc., kind of thing affected my university in particular? I think living in a digital world, that's, it's really going at what they call a warp speed. Things are changing very, very fast. And when things are changing so fast, whether you're a digital-centric university or whether you're a conventional traditional university, we have to also respond very fast. We've got no choice but to respond very, very fast. If you want to be a leader, then you've got to be ahead of the curve, ahead of the wave itself. So I think one of the key points that I'm looking for here is agility, because the demands from the market, is asking for greater flexibility, is asking for greater opportunities, is asking for equity, is asking for openness, access, etc., kind of thing. So while the demand is on us, private sector, to provide those kind of what they call opportunities for potential students, agility is key for us. And moving fast in the market and getting to the market is extremely critical. But while we can be fast, we could be as fast as a cheetah, but what's stopping us from moving fast is regulators and the regulatory environment, because the environment is not enabling us to move fast enough to meet the demands from the market. That's something you've got to look at. So whether I'm digital or not, I think we all have the same problem, that we need to move fast, and the what you call ecosystem that we are all engaged in does not allow us to move fast enough. While we need to move 100 miles per hour, we are moving at 30 miles per hour right now. And we are losing our global competitiveness as a result. We see a lot of new players coming into the global market, and Malaysia is slowly going down in terms of enrollments. I was checking the enrollments from the portal. Actually, enrollments over the last few years has been declining. We're talking enrollments from international students has been declining. Even local too has been declining. Local has been steady at around 48% in a participation rate. That's about it. We've not been increasing in any way in terms of access, providing access. So number one, I'm looking at it from the perspective of speed. Speed to the market, speed in terms of regulators responding to the market too as well, kind of thing. I'm referring to the what you call document that was done in 2020, and it's about education being higher education being an industry, and particularly that document was produced by the Ministry of Higher Education for the private sector, for us, the private sector who are basically there. And if you look at it, it also talks about how highly regulated the industry is in Malaysia. The ministry himself is saying it's highly regulated, and that shows, in other words, we should be looking at deregulations, whether we like it or not, kind of thing. The other key point that came out from them is that, I was quite surprised that in their own document, it says that, our penalties are too high. Our penal system is too high for so-called, transgressions done by the what they call private institutions. Sometimes those are perceived by the other side as transgressions, but on our side, we're looking at speed to the market, getting to the market, fulfilling the client's needs, customers' needs, etc., kind of thing. So that's the second point that came across in that report. The third thing that came across in the report was that, there's only lip service as far as we only talk about IR 4.0. There was no really enabling what they call incentives for private universities to get into IR 4.0 in a big way. It was not there as well, kind of thing. And the other key factor that came out by themselves, this is a report done by the ministry themselves, after consultation with the industry, kind of thing. It's a document that you can go and refer to it, kind of thing. The other thing that came across is that, there's supposed to be a National Higher Education Council, but the report says that the council has been inactive for many, many years. So, how are we now developing policies, guidelines, etc. kind of thing. And one final thing that came out from the report too, I think was very interesting for me, and I think for most of us, private operators, was saying that confusing, guidelines, confusing what you call standards, etc. kind of thing, just like what Khong was referring to. Very, very confusing circulars as well. And that, the MQA comes out with, certain sets of rules, and then KPT comes out with another set of rules, and so that becomes a bit confusing. I myself have had many times, this lip service provided by the ministers, that, there's no dichotomy between what you call private and public. It's all lip service. Because when we are questioned, or when we question them, why is it that such a public university can do so? Oh, that's public, you can't question them. You are private, you come under the ACTA 555, this is what we will do to you under ACTA 555. They come under UA, ACTA university is different kind of thing. So I think for those of us who have questioned this, we had this. So in other words, at the ministerial level, they say, yes, we treat you as equal, but at the implementation level, you do not see that equality being translated. So I think I'll stop there. I think we provocative enough. I've got too few more points to provoke more discussion, but I think thank you very much, Guy, for the time.
But again, Prof, thank you. Prof Ansary, it is the same issue. It's the same issue of granting established institutions more autonomy. Is that the issue?
Yes, in many ways, because I mentioned just now about how the environment is changing, how rapidly the environment is changing. And I think the minister, or former minister just now in the session just before us, was talking about all the changes that's been taking place in the environment and whether we're changing fast enough to meet those changes. I think the biggest change that's happening right now is that students do not really think that going to a university and spending 4 years to get a degree is worth their time, and economically it is, it's a good ROI on it. I think that's very important.
Absolutely.
If that is the case, then how do we as universities respond to this new way of learning that the students are asking for? Many are looking for micro-credentials. Is this the way to go? Is this the way to go? Are we looking at shortening our what you call our bachelor's degree program to shorter? Because many parts of the world, they just take 3 years to do what they call a bachelor's program, etc. kind of thing. So I think we got to look at this seriously. That's why I said the framework in which you're working, the ecosystem you're working, and the regulatory framework that we have now doesn't enable us to respond quickly enough for those changes that are taking place as far as the environment is concerned. So I think that is a serious concern, and that affects all of us, whether we are digital or not.
Thank you very much. Before I move over to Prof Mushtak, Prof Zita, you had 20 years at the MQA, as you said earlier. Do you think the MQA is capable of evolving to reflect this autonomy and this auditing?
Probably they have a function to run.
Sure, of course.
And the MQA Act has already provided their the kind of responsibilities. You have to do professional, you have to do full accreditation, you have to do maintenance audit. And I think those are the normal accreditation QA processes.
Sure.
Yeah, but I would think beside those key ones, because I think external quality assurance has a role to play in terms of allowing programs to be recognized nationally and internationally. So the QA system is, but I would go towards more internal flexibility. So I sit where I am right now. You want to change, you want to add 1 credit, remove 1 credit from your program, you have to go back to MQA. Sorry, I'm complaining about MQA now. I've been there, and you have to get the ministry to approve. And it takes time, and I know the pain of doing this. And you do renovation in your facilities, you have to go to the Majlis Perbandaran, bring the fire and department, you have to go to local authorities, and you cannot wait. You need the facilities, and you have to have it done. And they come and visit you and say, oh, you don't have the permission to do this. I think the accreditation processes is internationally recognized, but there are internal processes that you can actually do. Online submission, site visit, which doesn't require a virtual, we can do virtual. There's so many other things you can actually make it flexible for the institution. And I will go one thing, for strong institution with good record, you should give them a lighter touch. Okay.
Fantastic, thank you very much. Prof Mushtak, you challenged me at the beginning of this session to make sure we said something new, so I'm going to challenge you now to say something new in your opening remarks and not go round and round in circles as you suggested that perhaps sometimes we do.
I was thinking of just repeating what everybody has said, just to say that I agree with everything that has been said. But let me for a while speak as an engineer. And I agree with all of the challenges that we are facing. But the metaphor that came to my mind, if you give an engineer the project of building a highway from point A to point B, and let's say along the way there is a forest, there is a body of water, and there is a hill or a mountain. The engineer would not say, oh my goodness, how would I go through all of that? The engineer would say, I would build a bridge over the body of water. Now for the hill or the mountain, my choices are either to draw a tunnel or to go around it and come back. So sometimes, unfortunately, this is the way we deal with the regulatory challenges that we have. We work with them as realities of the environment, and we work around them or work through them and do something. Now, the other thing that I wanted to say, I do speak to CEO of MQA as a Vice-Chancellor's Council for Private Universities Chairman. I met the current minister. I don't question their intentions. Actually, I have speaking to people who are regulating us, giving us all that tough time, and I think their intentions are good. Now, the outcome may not be what they wanted, but the intention is good. So I think we need to continue working with them. I know for a fact there was a National Education Review Committee that was led by Pemandu. I know that the finding of that were presented to the minister on Tuesday. And I choose to remain optimistic, probably because I am an engineer and I need to work with whatever is available. But I wanted to also make another comment on the overall challenges that are facing us, and again allow me to offer an engineering way of looking at them. You know, personally, I was the other day invited by a very big oil company, the largest oil company in the country. You figure out which one is that. And they were asking me, what are you doing to prepare your graduates so they are ready for the industry? I said, I'm not preparing my graduates to be ready for the industry. This is not my role. They say, what? What is your role? I say, I'm preparing my graduates to be ready for life. And if they are ready for life, they will be ready for employability. I honestly think that focus on the let's get people to be employed. I'll work things out, but let people be employed. It's leading us away from creating employable graduates. How many of you obsesses about being happy? The more you obsess about being happy, the less happy you are. Happiness is an outcome of other things that you do. So is employability. So let me give you the engineering metaphor here. If we want to go from Earth to the moon, many people think that we fly a rocket in a straight line from Earth to the moon. That's not true. We first have to put the rocket in orbit, and it will orbit Earth sometimes 3 times until it has enough velocity to go to the moon, and then it orbits the moon a couple of times, and only then it can land. And sometimes in education, it needs to be done in a similar way. Instead of we are saying, oh, industry wants this, let's try to do it. And then industry wants that. And then we end up with graduates who, when they are out there, they are unable to get a job. So I think that notion of actually preparing people for life, then they will be getting a job and they'll be good citizens, they'll be civic people and all of that. Now, when I look at all these numbers, very depressing numbers that we have been looking at, more than 50% of the SPM graduates don't even want to go to higher education. Prof. Ansary is saying, rightly so, that people are saying, why would I spend so much money on a 4-year degree while I could just join, join work immediately? Because you know what? When I'm going to graduate, I'm going to be a Grab driver anyway. Or people being engineers to be paid at the end of the day 2,500 ringgit, while Lala Move has announced that for a lorry driver, they would pay you 3,760 as a starting pay. So the depressing numbers that we are having are, to me, and I hope you agree with me, is a symptom of a lack of motivation. Our students are not motivated. And we keep on going back, and I'm really, really pissed about this. Whoa, knowledge is available, everyone can learn online. My kids, when they go online, they don't learn, they play computer games. The reason is people are not motivated to learn. If they were motivated, they will find a way. And I think our job needs to be, how can we make people get connected with their inner self? Our primary and secondary and tertiary students, what is their purpose? We need to work with them on that. When they have the deep sense of purpose, when they knew about it, when the motivation kicks in, then we need to do very little, because absolutely the knowledge is out there, and maybe when that happens, we don't even need to teach. For those of you who attended the morning session, someone was saying, one of the speakers, that his nephew failed all the subjects while attending through, because during Zoom, the teacher is teaching while the nephew was just playing computer games. So the teaching happened and zero learning happened. Why? Because of the lack of motivation. I think we need to focus on that, and when we set our priorities in that way, when we get people to be motivated to learn, I think then learning will happen. I think the regulation will become better, and I think we are missing that point, because we are trying to fix this, trying to, to put so much energy in something that doesn't work. There is no way, it's impossible, physically impossible to fly a rocket directly from Earth to the moon. And I think that's probably what we are trying to do, and that's why we are facing all of these challenges.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I mean, so in a sense, you're challenging the whole rhetoric of employability, graduate employability, that is really very current at the moment.
Actually, not only the rhetoric, I'm challenging the mindset. Because there's a mindset that's saying, oh, the industry wants this. It will never work. It will never work. We are here to prepare people to be questioning, to be able to think, and that's why people could be doing a degree in history because they are interested in history, and then they could work for an oil company and be very good at it.
Right. Prof. Khong, do you agree with Prof. Mushtak's viewpoint?
Yes.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I do agree to some extent that education is for life, and we are preparing graduates for life. But I think we have to rethink and readapt some of the things which would enable the graduates to be able to move into jobs more easily than what they are facing now. Some of them who are supposed to be engineers, if they're not ready to do an engineering job, then there'll be some great problems both for him or her and the employer. So we have to somehow blend the two. We cannot say, it's just like preparing people as philosophers, great philosophers and great thinkers, but you cannot make them into engineers. If you want them to be engineers, you have to give them a dose of engineering and make sure that they are competent in the field.
In a minute.
Yeah, very, very quickly, again, as an engineer, I can tell you, because of the regulation, the knowledge that we give our engineers is absolutely immaculate. The reason that they cannot get a job is they can't motivate themselves, they cannot communicate, they cannot work in a team, they don't know why they are doing what they are doing. And by the way, when I say I want people to be motivated, it doesn't mean I don't want them to know thermodynamics and Fourier equation. Actually, when they are motivated, they will learn all of these things even better. And then that regulation will work, because you can give them very tough exams and they will learn it. Currently, people are telling me, why would I need to learn about algebra? Why do I need to learn about calculus? And it's the people are not motivated. One more really quick things I want to say here. You know, the other day I was attending a session, and Idris Jala, you know, the head of Pumandu, a previous minister, was telling all of us that he has made, you know, I don't know, 10 guitars, 10 electric guitars. And I asked myself, doesn't he have something better? So sometimes people actually do things because they are good for them, you know, good for their mental health. So think about it. We keep on saying, oh, we are giving our students courses that they will never use. I think that is really the wrong way of looking at things. If we teach them philosophy will be so useful in a time of AI and so on.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm gonna open it to the floor, Prof. Ansary. Let's open it to the floor. We've got some microphones here. We've got We've got about 20 minutes or so. Okay, great. Any questions from the floor? Ah, great. Yes. And remember, it's a question, please, not a statement. So please ask questions. Yeah. Gentleman at the back first of all, and then the gentleman at the front in the white shirt. Gentleman at the back first, yeah. Quick question, please, yeah, rather than a speech. Is the microphone not working? Okay. Well, let's start with the gentleman in the front. Maybe you can answer your question first, and then we'll come to you, sir, later.
Okay, thank you. I'm Nicholas Law on behalf of China Railway, first group in Malaysia. I also represent SDR Capital, Malaysia. As a venture capitalist, I'm very much immersed into science, technology, innovation.
Great.
So I listened a few topics today, and I think that Malaysia, the education system is still the old-fashioned education system. So I listened that you talk about STEM, science, technology, engineering, mathematics, but this is already far behind. And from China, we have been a long time talking about science, technology, engineering, art, and mathematics, but that one also far behind. The latest one we are talking about is STEAM, science, technology, and robotics, engineering, artificial intelligence to replace art and mathematics. So I'm not talking about statement, but just my question is, where are we now?
Very good question, sir. Thank you very much.
You.
Okay, so the implication there that Malaysia is slightly way old-fashioned, not keeping up with the times. Prof. Ansary, perhaps you can address that question.
Thank you very much for the question. I think if you look at it, we all have to transform education. UNESCO, I said in UNESCO as well. UNESCO has this big program called Digital Transformation of Education. It's going on right now. And what I can say is that what is happening right now, particularly if you look at what's happened in the last 6-7 months kind of thing with ChatGPT, etc., particularly generative AI and how generative AI is, the machine learning is making it become smarter and smarter and smarter. I think the question we should ask ourselves is, what are the future jobs that are going to be out there, number one? How do we prepare our students for those future jobs? That's number two. What do we do now, today, which is good and we should continue for the future? And what do we do now today, which we should just abandon and move on to do new things kind of thing? The World, Education Forum says that something like 50% of jobs will be lost in the next 10 years. If you look at those jobs, those are mainly routine jobs, which a robot can take over. Talk about robotics, but a robot can take over. In other words, and I think earlier in the session as well, we had from Coursera talking about the kind of skills that are required, in the job market. I think there are two things what I want to respond to Prof. Mushtak as well. I think higher education is not all about employability. I think Noraini also talking about this. We shouldn't be just consumers. We should be also creators. So higher education is also about creation and not just about being a consumer. Here, what I mean as a consumer is that when you go into university, you're just looking to become an employee. You should be looking at how can you become an employer as well, not just being an employee. So I think you should be creators, wealth creators, rather than employees. I think we are lacking in that, in creating those wealth creators. Okay. And it's interesting that most of the wealth creators in the world didn't go to a university for formal education. It's also an interesting fact. So I think we should also accept that fact that, sometimes when you go through the rigor of an academic higher program, you are more suited to become an employee rather than become an employer. or rather become a creator kind of thing. That's one. So I think we should be honest enough with ourselves, saying that technology is going to have a big impact on what the future jobs are going to be. Technology is going to have a big impact on learning and teaching as well. But having said that, I think we have to bear one thing in mind as educators. The pedagogy should always be master of the technology. Thank you.
Great, okay, thank you. Just to address that question, the suggestion was that Malaysia is falling behind some of its perhaps regional competitors. Would you agree with that? Prof. Khong? You, obviously the gentleman mentioned China in particular, who yeah.
I think industry moves very, very fast.
Yep.
Innovations in technology moves very, very fast. And sometimes universities do not keep up with those innovations fast enough.
Yep.
So we have to, I want to say that I agree with Prof. Mushtak that
Sure.
education is supposed not just to teach you a very specific skill, but to be thinkers, creators, innovators. And that should be able to make you be adaptive to new technologies that may come onto the horizon, and how to create those new technologies. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you speak to colleagues at APU, for example, which I do regularly, they say that there's no way that a computer science curriculum can keep up to date with the developments in industry. So developing that agility is so important. Gentleman at the back, yes.
Salvaraj from Unimas Athletic Center.
Yep.
My question is, basically before the question, I just want to reflect back, way back in 1999 when Malaysia was launching a 6th Malaysian plan.
Right.
We almost had a similar kind of discussion at the Education Forum. And today, we're almost having the same discussion what we had 24 years ago. My question is, why are we not addressing the actual issue? Basically, we're looking at the stakeholders here, the schools, the colleges, the universities, and the industry. Now, all of us are addressing issues. We are just, doing engagement, whereby we are looking at the tail end of the tail, where we're looking at the issues and all that. Why don't we go back all the way down, right from early childhood, the primary and secondary schools, and then why are we not doing that? We're still talking about this.
Okay, well, obviously we're here representing higher education, but it's a very good point. We should be starting earlier. Basically. By the time the students get to university, they're not ready.
I do agree with that. And I think the earlier discussion by Dato Masli, I think, actually pointed out, you have to start early. And I think this is what was being mentioned this morning about the kind of programs where you introduce these young kids to the early childhood education is really, really essential today, because we are going to get graduates, students coming out from the secondary school, going to the university ill-prepared. Yeah, I completely agree. I think it's revamping the whole system, because it's a lifelong learning. You're from cradle to the grave. That's the notion. We all know that. But we are different people doing different things, and I don't know whether we are talking the same language collectively. Yeah, I made a comment besides that point, which I agree with you. We should start early. I think that's why they're looking at early childhood education. I think we are having a session after this on early childhood education. Maybe we can look at it. But I also think that, I'm not sure how many of you is familiar with Malaysian qualifications framework. Anyone not familiar?
No.
No? Because I was very involved in this. The qualification framework is about learning outcome, which is actually giving living skills to students. It is supposed to be lifelong skills that you carry with you wherever you go. You are supposed to be able to chart your own personal growth. You should teach the kids to be motivated and so on, and creative, and move on. I felt I failed somewhere along the line.
Fantastic. Yes, Nina.
Hi. Yes, just to follow up on that point, there is an example that I'd like to share of industry making exactly that same decision in terms of where to invest, where you're going to get the most ROI. So Khazanah, as most of you will know, Sovereign National Wealth Fund, it has lots and lots of investee companies. They were not happy at what was coming out, products. So they actually decided that the intervention has to go back to school. And that was the genesis of the program called Amanah, or Trust School program. Some of you may be aware of that was launched in partnership with Yayasan Amer and Ministry of Education. So that was a program that has been going for 12 years. The aim is to do exactly that, change the mindset, change the environment, culture of the schools to produce, students who are ready for exactly the kind of skills we're talking about.
Have you got a question for the panel?
But the question being is that I think, going back to what Malik was saying earlier on, I honestly think after 30 years working in the system, there is it's not just that there's no political will to change, because there are examples like the trust schools that have worked. My question to the panel, do you think that there is a political will deliberately to keep those in the bottom down, not to improve the system?
Right.
That's why we're still here, 30 years later,
thank you very much.
still talking about the same thing.
And I think, Masli was saying earlier that, I can't remember his exact phrase, but he didn't say politicians are a waste of space or something like that, wasn't it? Or they get in the way, and he was admitting, I'm a politician myself. So is there a sense that politicians are, it's a controversial question, but it's an interesting question. Ansary.
Yeah. Thank you, Guy. Let me just try to give a quick response to this. I think what Prof. Mushtak was referring to about motivation kind of thing, and listening to what Nina was talking just now, it starts at early childhood, and what Salvaraj was mentioning just now. It's a whole spectrum from early childhood, and what we get at our doorstep as higher education is the product of something like 12 years to 13 years product. That's what we get. And that product has already been molded into a particular kind of individual, and the 3 years or 4 years with us is not going to change that much. I think science has showed that again and again. So I think what needs to happen is right at the very beginning of the value chain. And this is where we need to look at, the clients that we're getting today, the millennials that are coming in today, we're talking generation Alpha is coming in today. They are already technologically savvy, all right? It's technology that excites them. I mean, look at the environment right now. Even a 6-month-old child, 8-month-old child is already playing with technology kind of thing. So I think we need to look at how do you make learning fun, and not the same way that we have been teaching all this while. So learning has got to be fun, meaning that we've got to use more gamification in order to make them more fun. And in that way, hopefully, they'll get more motivated to learn. Because I think what we've made, the mistake they've made, all of us have made, is that we have made learning very tedious. And in certain subjects, it becomes so tedious, and that's why they don't go into STEM subjects, because they feel it's so difficult to pass this subject. So I think this is where we need to really address the issue of what is learning, and how do you make learning fun so that they're motivated to learn, because we live in an age of lifelong learning, cradle to grave.
Thank you very much, thank you. I mean, addressing that question that was raised about that the political system is causing the problems. Zita, you wanted to answer that question.
This session is being recorded, so I don't want to say the wrong thing. I made an earlier comment outside there that we seem to be paralyzed, a paralysis in the system. We know what's wrong, and we keep talking about what's wrong, but we don't seem to be able to find some solution, but it remains on paper. I get it. I've been in the industry like 25 years. At the end of the day, I was telling my staff, I think we need to make the change ourselves.
Can I come in as an early childhood educator?
Yeah? Okay, go ahead.
We have national preschool curriculum. We were asked to personalize every child's portfolio performance and then hand it to the primary school. And they are supposed to continue from there, but do they? Do they read through the profile? Do they run through the children's profile? Do they ask for the children's profile? Our national preschool curriculum, actually, like I think Prof. Noraini was saying, we have very good curriculum. It's the implementation and it's the inspecting not done well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for that remark. Prof. Khong, any comments on this whole kind of the political system? The system is paralysed. We all know what the changes are that need to be made, but we're not doing it.
I have have to say very carefully. Sure. There is now a lot of discussion on the internet about how the deep state is manipulating the whole political system to keep a certain group of people from progressing and a certain group of people, the elites, from doing very, very well. So perhaps this will fall in line with what Nina has suggested.
Okay. We've only got a few more minutes, so any more questions from the audience before yes, please, Min. Please introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Min, education team from the British High Comm. So I was very interested to hear about autonomy because we talk about it a lot in HE. And coming back to regulations, self-accreditation status is what I see one of the ways that we could have autonomy for higher education. However, I also note that the status is given far in between. And also I understand because it comes with prestige, it comes with responsibility, but self-accreditation status doesn't mean it's a free ride. It's very well regulated as well. So I think my question is just abroad, why is this not one of the solutions moving forward to give more autonomy to the universities?
Yeah, we've kind of raised that issue as well, but particularly self-accrediting status, which obviously, historically, I've been here 18 years. I remember lots of fanfare when USM was given their special self-accrediting status. Zita, you were probably responsible, or you were certainly an MQA at the time.
Oh, wow, that's a tough question in a way, because I was actually involved in drafting the law on self-accrediting status. But I think we wanted to recognize robust, good universities to be given autonomy so they can design their own program. They basically don't have to come to MQA, that's the bottom line. And they have to actually demonstrate good track record in maintaining their internal quality system. That's all they have to do. They accredit their own program. I actually chair the accreditation team for UTP. And it's a tough job, actually. And you have to keep the universities on toes because they need to keep up. Now, this is again another area to be reviewed, perhaps in the near future. There's a lot of question about getting the self-status, what we call SWA accreditasi. I think it goes back to the policymakers. We used to wait for Setara. Where I am coming from, they were also thinking, can we get one in 2026? And they were asking me, I said, can you demonstrate that you're ready for it or not? But I think this should be posed back to the ministry and the MQA to look at how they can actually allow a broaden the people who can apply, institutions that can apply for self-accrediting status. Right. But I must tell you, it's a lot of responsibility because it's difficult. Once a university is given, it's very hard to revoke that, and we expect the universities to actually work hard to scrutinize themselves. If they get it, I think there's a lot of autonomy. They're only subjected to getting approval from the ministry. Okay. I really hope that the industry, many of them are ready, that there should be an opening for application. But this is a question that the ministry must answer, and MQA. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we've almost run out of time. We've got 5 more minutes. Any more quick questions from the audience? If not, I'll ask the panelists for a kind of final statement. Very briefly. You'll have to go to a microphone, we can't hear you. And you've only got 30 seconds to answer your question.
My question is, now I'm really concerned about our environment. How Malaysian education system respond to ESG from the childhood until the adult. We have no time for that. So have Malaysia ready? Okay.
Fantastic. We won't be able to answer that question now. As you say, it's a much bigger issue, but perhaps another panel can address that issue. I'm going to go down, starting with Mushtak. 1 minute. Final thoughts. 1 minute.
We are talking about regulation. I just want to remind all of us, you can be in jail and be free. I think there is so much leeway for us to work while we are trying to fix the system. I talked about motivation within our students. Question is, are we motivated? Are our teachers themselves motivated? Can we work on teachers' motivation? I think that is something that we can do ourselves. We talked about soft skills and all of that. And what's stopping us from training our teachers in soft skills? So if we want creative graduates, are our teachers and lecturers creative? We want them to be entrepreneurial. Are we ourselves entrepreneurial, or we are just able to talk all about that? One last prediction about the jobs of the future. One thing that I know about them, anyone who's telling you this job will be popular in 10 years or 20 years, it will not happen. Nobody can tell the future. So the only thing that we can do is to be ready to change and be motivated to learn where learning can happen. And remember, within this room, there is enough power to at least change one classroom or change one faculty or one university. Let's start there.
Great, thank you very much. Zita.
Thank you. I 100% agree with you, Prof. Mushtak, because I think there's a lot of autonomy in our hands to improve the system that we are creating for our students. There's a lot of room for lecturers to be creative, to actually build up their students, but you know, it's a commitment and a motivation on the part of the lecturers. Don't worry about the other agencies and all that. It's actually up to us to make sure our students are great and actually competent and ready to go out. It's our responsibility. I think the small things, our regulations are not really stopping us from giving high quality education, experiential learning to our students. Please remember that it's in our hands.
Great, thank you. Prof. Ansary.
Yeah, despite all that we say, I think we are still world class because the students still come here. We are still among the top 10 destinations in the world for international students to come here. That says something about our higher education system. But I think what we're looking for now is the diversity in the landscape of higher education as far as what we are all offering. And that in providing that diversity, I think we need to look back at the enabling framework that we have right here in Malaysia. My one parting thought here is that while we all know there are so many problems, why don't we all collaborate as well, and speak with one voice in order for us to overcome these problems? I think sometimes we're speaking with too many voices as well. So I think we should also speak with one voice to overcome some of the key issues so that the key stakeholder understands and takes actions against those considerations that we have. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Prof. Khong.
Thank you. I think one of the questions that was posed to us in the letter that invited us to the panel is there a future for private higher education in Malaysia? I would say, even going by the government's reckoning, private education will continue to, if not prosper, grow. By the figures itself, they are supposed to be, by 2025, there are supposed to be more students doing private higher education than in the public system. I think despite all our grumblings, the private providers will continue to plod on. We are very resilient. That's why we are in the private sector. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you, panelists. Thank you, audience. Much appreciated for your attention, and if you could thank the panel in the traditional way. And hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Guy Paring, for that very